I'm Ashton Addison from EventChain for Investment Pitch Media and FinTech News Network. And today on Blockchain Interviews, we have Mrinal Manohar, the CEO of Casper Labs. Mrinal, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Likewise, Ashton. Thanks for having me on. It's my pleasure.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to dive into Casper Labs today. If you could start by giving us a short explanation of Casper Labs and why your team considers it to be the decentralized future.
Sure. If I were to step really way back, I think the industry's had two big tectonic shifts. Tectonic shift one was the creation of Nakamoto consensus, on which Bitcoin is based. And really, the core innovation there is it's the best form of copy protection the world's ever seen. Right? People have tried to copy protect MP3s, all sorts of stuff, and never succeeded. And this really found a way to copy protect something that's digital. So a digital asset was born. And then I think the next big tectonic shift was Ethereum, when they added Turing complete smart contracts on top of it. So now those digital assets became programmable. I think what's happened in the intervening years is, people think the next tectonic shift is scalability. And some people think that's just throughput, but I think of it as throughput, scalability, and security, and also scalability in developer access. I think systems aren't scalable unless you hit all three of those. But I think a lot of those have come with compromise. The true decentralization and permissionlessness principles sometimes have been, put aside for the sake of expediency on just throughput. I call this, sort of the TPS dilemma. I don't think TPS is an excellent metric, to be honest. It needs to be fast, but if it's not decentralized and permissionless, there's no point, in my opinion. So Casper Labs really is all about building a fully decentralized and permissionless system without ever compromising those two things, yet providing scale through proof of stake and other engineering innovations. In addition to that, we take security and developer adoption very, very seriously, and think those are core components of scalability as well. And hopefully this will usher in the next stage of innovation in the industry.
Great, and I'm glad that you touched on Bitcoin and Ethereum and the evolution, and currently the scalability and the throughput of Bitcoin and Ethereum are in the works of getting better, but they're not perhaps up to scale of worldwide adoption using the proof of work consensus algorithm right now. Could you talk about the differences in Casper's CBC proof of stake algorithm, how it's different than Ethereum, and what makes it so much more scalable?
Sure. So it's not that different from where Ethereum wants to get eventually, right? They do eventually want to get to CBC Casper, which is 100% proof of stake. As a running proof of work network, there's a transitionary, state going from some of it being proof of work and some of it being proof of stake, and then eventually a full switch. So that'll likely, the development timeline last I saw seems like it's a few years out, CBC Casper. Where ours varies is, and I'm only going off of latest published work at Ethereum. The proposals for CBC Casper were not provably live. They're provably safe, and the protocol has very, very interesting characteristics there. But provably live means you are guaranteed that the system will come to consensus at some point. And we published something called the Highway Protocol. Dr. Daniel Kane was the lead researcher on this, and this is a provably live flavor of CBC Casper. And that's the version that will be part of our first release. People can read the paper on our website. But we are also in the process of updating it. So there will be a Highway Plus Plus coming out soon.
Very cool. And you touched on there's a bit of a trade-off between scalability and ensuring that you also have security and decentralization as well. How much focus has been on balancing those three items together?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not using TPS as your core metric, you can actually get all three. You can get all three. And I'll tell you how you can get all three, right? So first of all, with a pure proof of stake system, the first piece of efficiency really is that in proof of work, 90 to 95% of your processing power generates random numbers. And these random numbers have no further utility. Proof of stake kind of flips the switch on this. And since there's no random numbers that need to be generated to lend security, all that processing power can be refocused on doing useful work, like forming consensus or processing transactions. So that's where you get, a huge lift right there out the gate. And then the second thing is, if you do smart things with your virtual machine as well as your block footprint, you can now start, scaling the system to hundreds or thousands of TPS. So, currently in test, we're getting about, 160 to 200 TPS on a single core. So, if you're thinking of an 8-core machine as standard, the VM is doing, 1600 or so. And, we can do that without sacrificing decentralization or security. All the security properties of Nakamoto consensus are pretty much preserved in our proof of stake protocol. And, we've engineered it from the ground up to be an open permissionless system.
That's great. Those tests sound very promising. And it'd be great to give a bit of a timeline for the viewers on what stage is the Casper Labs testnet at, and you're moving towards a mainnet. What are the dates for that?
Sure. I'll start with its software engineering. So, stuff happens. Our testnet launched on time. We gave ourselves end of Q1 launch date. We launched on March 31st. This is our, first version of the testnet. We were super lucky to have like a bunch of. We thought we'd have 5 or 6 people, keep it small and close, but 22 people signed up. So we have 22 validators running right now. So, testnet's launched, it's live, we're working through, it's our first, public decentralized release. So, we're working through some of like the issues you discover when you launch it first. But overall, we're really happy, we're able to have blocks finalized on the network. Most of the validators are staying in sync, and it's helped provide a basis for a lot of the optimizations that we plan to do in the coming months. In terms of launch, we think we'll be code complete, call it fall, and we're looking to launch this year.
That's great. And that's great that you have that many validators jumping on. And for clarification for people that aren't familiar with proof of stake, they're used to Bitcoin and Ethereum. With this validation, is it anybody's able to become a validator and anybody's able to stake to help bring consensus to the network? Or are there specific, rules or specifications that validators must follow?
There are no rules or specifications. Anyone can join. So anyone can join. It's a completely open and permissionless system. So we don't have any, and we don't even have like classes. Like we don't have, these are the relay validators. These are the these are the super validators. There's no classes, so everyone's exactly the same. You come to the table with your stake, and you're able to validate. The only thing I'd say is we'd probably have a recommended hardware spec. It won't be super expensive because it's proof of stake, and if you fall behind on that, you run the risk of falling behind on the state, which means your rewards might get throttled a bit because you're not keeping up with the rest of the system. But other than that, there's no special requirements. As long as you have a stake and you can keep up with the system, you should be all good to go.
Great to know. And as you continue to develop out the mainnet, one of the keys to mainstream adoption will definitely be having some applications on there, and for that you'll need a lot of developer support. What are the kinds of tools you will have available for developers to build on Casper Labs rather than them focused on building on a larger ecosystem like Ethereum?
Yeah, that's great. And so we first of all we love Ethereum. So anything I say about this is not it's with all due respect. We're standing on the shoulders of giants here. None of this is meant to come across as slagging any project in any way. The one thing we've noticed when we talk to like developer communities is, and I'll give you a number in context. There's 7,000 to 10,000 blockchain developers. Most of them know Solidity, but worldwide there's 26 million developers. What this is telling you is penetration of this industry is like sub 0.2% even. It's a very, very small portion of developers that have onboarded. And one of the primary reasons for this is because they don't know where to start and they don't understand the programming languages. So one thing, a decision we made right out the gate is to embrace open programming standards. So we're going to support Rust and assembly script right out the gate. But then over time, we can basically support any programming language that has a compilation target down to WASM, which is about 95% of them. So that's one thing we do. And what's great about this is, you're basically making it an easier system to use. People are already familiar with these languages. There's tons of documentation about them. They're highly maintained out there. And, they fit into your IDEs or developer environments that you're already used to. And then I can go into a couple more features that we have. So, for example, querying the state of the blockchain has always been an issue. So like on Ethereum, you use third-party tools like Infura sometimes. We have all of this in the node. We have a GraphQL interface. And so querying the state becomes fairly straightforward. And I know, I don't want to go too long on this, but there's a lot of other tools we've added too. We have continuous integration and continuous deployment, very, very important for businesses. We have a lot of contract writers have a lot of control over their contracts. Your contracts can be upgraded. You can decide who can call your contract. You can go all from, hey, I'm 100% open source. Anyone can call my contract from anywhere, to I want this specific contract to only be callable by me. And that, it's just freedom to develop the tools in the way you want. And that combined with a few things like, we have weighted key management, we have flexible payment code. All of this has come really from feedback from companies looking to build on the blockchain and telling us why they aren't. We're like, okay, let's try to see if we can fix those.
That's great. And with the release of the mainnet, you will also have a Casper Labs CLX token. Now, can you explain what's the primary purpose of CLX and how is it used within the ecosystem?
Yeah, the primary purpose is twofold of the CLX token. So one is it's the token that'll be used to stake as part of our proof of stake system. So the underlying security of the system is established by the CLX as a staking token. The second thing is it's also what you're going to use to pay for usage of the system. So if you want to use the CLX network, you want to deploy a transaction, you want to deploy something off of your application, the way you pay, the validator set is through the CLX token. It works very similar to, gas on ETH, on the Ethereum network. So it looks pretty much like that, except it's also a staking token.
Great. And they will be created throughout the Genesis block on the mainnet, I believe. Is there, how will they be distributed, or how do validators access tokens so that they can use them to stake?
Yeah, so the token will only be released after the network goes live. So we're not going to do any, interim token or anything like that. So, once we've gone live, it'll be listed, etc. And, people can acquire it to either pay for computation on the network or to become a validator. But the initial validator set, can acquire tokens privately, but it's only for validation.
Okay. And for people that are interested in learning more about the validation and the staking, what's the best way for them to learn more information?
You can contact the team directly. So, we have our Discord is where most of our developers sit. So that's usually a pretty developer and engineering intensive conversation. So you could go to our website and join the Discord channel, or you can find us on Telegram, and we'd be glad to point you to the right resources there.
Great. Well, it's all the time that we have, Mrinal. Thank you so much for speaking about Casper Labs today. Congratulations on the recent testnet launch, and all the best moving forward with the development. And I'm interested in learning more about the CLX as it continues in the mainnet. So let's follow up in the near future.